he's not here for me. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be doing a Raid My Shelves. Alright, before you get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, have you read any of Sylvia Moreno Garcia's books? And if so, what were they and how did you feel about them? Alright, so it has been a minute since I've done a Raid My Shelves, but essentially this is an excuse for me to find some sort of a theme that connects multiple books on my TBR shelf, and I basically try to form a video out of it. This one is really simple. Sylvia Moreno Garcia is the author of both these books. That's all. It just worked out really well that I've been in the mood to read both of these books, and you know, I read them in a very close time period, so here we go. I think at this point, now that I've finished both of these, I'm up to 5 of her books, and for the most part, I tend to always really enjoy them, so that's why I thought this would be a very successful reading vlog. So first up, I read The Beautiful Ones, and this one is a historical fantasy story in which we are following our main character of Nina, who is basically going to be coming out into society here soon. However, she is from a small country town and ends up staying with her cousin and his wife to try and become a little bit more proper, a little bit more of a societal lady. Unfortunately for her, during that time, she ends up meeting Hector, who is a very charismatic, telepathic magician. Nina herself also has telepathy and originally kind of strikes up a friendship with him in the guise of trying to learn how to better control her own abilities. The unfortunate element comes in whenever Hector decides to start courting Nina, and turns out things are a little bit more complicated than Nina originally believes. On the opposite side, I read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, and this one obviously is a retelling of the Island of Dr. Moreau story by H.G. Wells. In this one though, Carlotta, Dr. Moreau's daughter, is our main character, and we are watching as she lives in this small town in Mexico. Her world is definitely changed whenever the benefactor's son, Eduardo, comes to visit. This definitely complicates the lives of everybody at this compound, not just Carlotta, but also Montgomery, Dr. Moreau's assistant slash groundskeeper slash bodyguard, and then also the lives of the numerous hybrids that Dr. Moreau has created. I totally forgot to film this intro until I officially finished out the books, meaning I'll talk to y'all again here shortly. Hey guys, so I've started into The Beautiful Ones, and I'm actually at chapter 18, which is at page 118. That's kind of ironic. I'm enjoying this, but in like a soap opera way. And I have to wonder if perhaps Moreno Garcia was inspired by Wuthering Heights, because this feels like a fantastical Wuthering Heights retelling. It really does. It definitely has the atmosphere of some historical romances, some sort of like Jane Austen energy going on, and we are following 3 characters. First, we have Valerie, who is married to a fairly rich man, and she is taking care of Nina, her husband's little cousin. She is technically considered her chaperone and is trying to help Nina become more of a lady, more accepted by society, because Nina lives in the country and she's honestly pretty do whatever you want, speak your mind. She has an obsession with entomology. She loves collecting butterflies and beetles, and she also has telekinetic abilities, which for the most part in the society is looked down on. We also see through the eyes of Nina, who honestly is probably the most likable perspective. Valerie definitely just has this whole idea that she must maintain her status in society because it helps her family, and if she stays married to this rich man, then, you know, he will give her family money. She absolutely hates playing this role and having to ask for money, but she is also so obsessed with status and has to have everything. Valerie's an interesting character. She's definitely not likable. I understand the perspective we get through seeing in her eyes. I totally follow the societal pressures, the familial pressures. I still don't like her. Then we see through Nina, who is fairly young, naive. We don't really have any for sure names, but I do believe that Valerie and our male character Hector are roughly like 28, maybe 30. And then Nina is old enough that she is joining society and starting to look for suitors. So I'm gonna guesstimate like 18. Hector is our Heathcliff character. Hector is a telekinetic performer. He has made his name, made his money by performing in these like magic shows, but everybody knows it's telekinesis. However, he just has a very strong control of his abilities. And with that also, there are acknowledgments that other people in this world have magic, but really the only people we've seen thus far are Hector and Nina. And in both of their perspectives, having these magical abilities isn't something to envy. For example, Hector is definitely looked down upon for being an entertainer with these abilities, whereas Nina was severely bullied as a child because of having these abilities and having no control over them. The real focus, the real meat of this plot is in the fact that Valerie and Hector were childhood sweethearts. However, he ended up leaving to try and make money in a different continent, and while he was gone, Valerie ended up marrying her current husband. He has come back into her life. He is more rich, has more of a status, and is trying to enter the society as well, and takes it upon himself to start courting Nina in order to get closer to Valerie. Definitely similar to Wuthering Heights. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it, but it has the fantastical elements because Hector and Nina also bond over their abilities. Hector has sort of been teaching her to control them a little bit. I feel bad for Hector, but I also don't particularly like him. He's aware that what he's doing is not right, but he keeps maintaining that like, oh, Nina's not really in love with him. She'll get bored and she'll leave, or if he ends up leaving, she's not gonna be heartbroken. Nothing that bad will happen, but no. She has clung on to this friendship that has developed between the two of them and is incredibly hopeful for a official relationship. And like, I hate Valerie. I hate Valerie, but I have very conflicting feelings on Hector, whereas I just want to hug Nina. I just want to give this girl a proper hug and tell her it's gonna be okay. You don't have to find happiness with all of these shitty people. Stay in the country, live your best life, collecting all of the bugs you want. Yeah, that's a lot. So I am really enjoying this one. I'm glad I picked it up, even if it was kind of like a total random grab. Hey guys, excuse all of this. It's really late on a Friday night, and not only did I have to work super freaking late because tax season is the worst, but also I was helping my parents to babysit my niece and nephews. It's been quite an eventful night, but I have to do this update now, or else I'm just officially gonna finish out this book. I am absolutely loving The Beautiful Ones. It's a soap opera. Like, I was explaining this to my mom. Her first comment was, I thought you hated those sort of stories. I thought I did too, but I think the fact that it's Sylvia Moreno Garcia means I'm enjoying it way more than I would be from somebody else, because I love her writing. The atmosphere is absolutely fantastic. Every single chapter, she takes the time to really bring the whole setting to life, to reinforce this fantastical world in some way. And that is a reason why I keep picking her books up. Her character work is so good. It's so good. There really isn't much of a plot going on in this. It is all about character dynamics. I am completely enthralled. I hate Valerie so incredibly deeply. Genuinely want to take Nina away from all of these people because she deserves so much better. I'm still not the biggest fan of Hector, but at least he's aware of the wrongs he's done. He's tried to atone for them, and it actually seems like he has gone through some growth, which, I mean, we did officially get ages, and Nina just turned 20, which puts my estimation for Hector's age around like 30. I feel like you should have gotten past this childhood hang up by 30, but you know, that's just me. So this is actually split into two sections. So you have the first part and the second part. The first part is more focusing on Nina and Hector's original relationship when she believed he was courting her, but in reality he's just trying to get near Valerie. And then there's the second part after she figures out what is happening and realizes, he's not here for me. Valerie continues to be the absolute worst. She's just incredibly hypocritical whimsical and a narcissist. It's exhausting. I really loved that there was this specific scene where Hector is getting in a fight with somebody else to talk about taking Nina's hand, and he comments like, she's not yours, she's not mine, she's her own person, she should make her own decision. And it was like, wow, thank you for being the only person here who has given her any agency, any autonomy, particularly when the one other main female character in the story, Valerie, is continuously taking that away from her. It's fantastic. Like, plot so soap opera-y. The first half is definitely very Wuthering Heights. The second half goes a little bit more off the rails. I am really enjoying this. I was hopeful that I was gonna really like this one, but I definitely had sort of mid expectations because I've heard some people who really praised it and then other people who have really hated on it. This is working out great for me. I actually could see myself rereading this and maybe like working through and annotating it. Hey y'all, so I officially finished out The Beautiful Ones, and God bless Sylvia Moreno Garcia for not going where I thought this was gonna go. I was very nervous that we were returning to the classics feel this had at the beginning. She didn't do it. She faked me out. The final note of this, I really enjoyed. Across the board, I'm very shocked that I loved this as much as I did, just because, like I've said before, it's very soap opera-y. It's very over the top, dramatic. Valerie as a villain character, I mean, she's a character you can understand. You get her actions, you get her motives, you totally see where she's coming from, how her perception of the world has been skewed by her experiences. But even so, she is sometimes a little bit too cartoony villain. But even with that, like, I really enjoyed this book. I've been waffling back and forth between 4 and 4.5 stars because I had such a good time with this. I really enjoyed the themes that were brought up, feminist themes, the individuality, finding yourself, healing from past trauma. Across the board, like, this really was such a strong book. I definitely think it's a book that, like, not everybody would enjoy because it is so soap opera-y. The whimsical setting and the very lush atmosphere really draws you into the story, and then the well-rounded characters keep you invested. I love Nina. I loved her so dearly. And by the end of this book, I really was surprised that I had become so invested in the romance, especially with how things started out. I just didn't think we were ever going to come back from that. But honestly, at the end, like, I thought they were pretty adorable. I was rooting for them. I just wanted them to run away together and be happy and get away from these terrible, toxic people they were surrounded by. Like I said, Valerie was equally as well created, even though I did hate her. And I did appreciate how she was utilized to tie into the topics being discussed, even if sometimes it was a little too obvious. Again, like, across the board, this was so freaking good. I didn't expect this to be a book that I've been thinking about so much since I finished it. My Cawpile breakdown came to 4 stars, but the more I think on it, the more I really wonder if I should just give this 4.5 because it was really good. It was really good. Yeah, what the heck. I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars. I recommend, especially if you love drama. If you love drama, pick this up. Hey guys, so I have hit, how far? Chapter 11, so roughly page 104 in The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. And thank God that Stephanie Bookish adjusted my expectations for this book. Going into a book that is a retelling of Dr. Moreau, I expected it to be a little sci-fi, maybe a bit horrific, but Stephanie pointed out that actually this book is more like a historical romance. I'm really glad for that because it shifted my expectations, and that means I'm enjoying this a lot more because I knew what I was going into. This fits very perfectly with The Beautiful Ones. These two are pretty similar in storytelling, whereas The Beautiful Ones is set in a fantastical world that still has a historic feel. This is technically set on Earth, but it is set in the 19th century, and of course, with Dr. Moreau as a main character, there are some sci-fi elements included. I guess I'm gonna say here, if you don't know the story of Dr. Moreau, perhaps this book's a little spoilery, but that book has been out for many a years. There are multiple movies about it. I'm not gonna treat you with kid gloves about it. I'm gonna be upfront with you. There are multiple humanoid animal characters who are friends with our main character, Carlotta. However, unfortunately for Dr. Moreau, these hybrids still aren't perfect. They still aren't really succeeding in the way he was hoping. They have many health ailments, and most of them are actually quite fragile. When we start the book, Carlotta is about 14, and her father's benefactor has come to visit to see what progress they're making, as well as to leave Mr. Montgomery, who kind of works as a assistant slash groundskeeper slash bodyguard almost. Montgomery definitely feels like a character created by Moreno Garcia. He's pretty morally gray. He's a drunk. He is addicted to gambling. He's not very personable. He's a bit of an ass. But at the same time, I can't help but like him. He takes care of everybody on the island. He does put a lot of effort into his job. Clearly, he has some sort of feelings for Carlotta, which we're gonna come back to that. Carlotta also feels pretty similar in characterization to Nina from The Beautiful Ones. She is a very well-educated girl. She definitely pushes against societal norms at this time. She's headstrong, a bit unusual, but at the same time slightly naive. However, in comparing this to The Beautiful Ones, I have no idea who I am supposed to be shipping in this. Stephanie gave me the heads up that I should be expecting a romance book, but who am I shipping her with? So like I said, when we start the book, Carlotta is 14, but there is a time jump by 6 years. So at this point she is 20 and Montgomery is 35. At the start of the book, when these two are introduced, Montgomery doesn't really think anything of Carlotta. He considers her a bit of a child. And even when we see his perspective after the time jump, initially he does sort of view her as like this obnoxious little sister almost. But then we see Carlotta interacting with the benefactor's son, Eduardo, and there's a shift. It definitely seems like Montgomery is jealous, and I have questions. Dr. Moreau is trying to push Carlotta into having some sort of a relationship with Eduardo because it will help him to have more time for his experiments and hopefully to finally get positive results for the man giving him all this money. Carlotta's definitely aware of this and she isn't really complaining about it. She finds Eduardo attractive and a bit alluring, but again, am I supposed to be shipping her with Montgomery or with Eduardo? There's a 15-year age gap, I believe, between these two. And there's a 10-year age gap in The Beautiful Ones. So clearly that's something Moreno Garcia is comfortable writing. And I don't know how to feel about that either. I like Montgomery, even though he is a bit of an ass, but do I like him with Carlotta? I don't really feel particularly strong about Eduardo yet either. He feels more age appropriate for Carlotta. Because we do know he's only a year older than her. I definitely am liking it. The atmosphere work is absolutely impeccable. Character creation, fantastic. Things I just inherently expect from her work. As far as the plot goes, I am confused. Hello, beautiful peoples. So I have worked further into The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. I am currently at chapter 19, page 182. And I have figured out the whole shipping scenario. It definitely does continue to feel very much like a romance. It's a historical romance. There's a bit of like the sci-fi elements starting to come up more and more. Particularly in regards to Carlotta, we learn that apparently she has suffered from this illness ever since she was a child. And because of it, when she was little, she would be secluded to her bedroom. However, her father ended up finding this, not cure, but this medicine that he can give her that allows her to have a relatively normal life so long as she is not overexcited. So on one hand, I'm very intrigued by that in terms of a mystery, but on the other hand, it's interesting to look at it as far as Carlotta's relationship with her father goes, because she has this reliance on him. She loves her father. She could never leave without his approval because she wouldn't be able to have this medicine, so she wouldn't be able to survive. While she does love her father, we're starting to see more and more the Dr. Moreau of the original story, which makes perfect sense because, I mean, he's not a great scientist, ethically speaking. I'm definitely getting Shiloh vibes from Repo the Genetic Opera in regards to that. It's a really niche reference there.
I'm infected. I'm infected.
And then, also, with the whole romance, So now we have seen a little bit more of Carlotta and Eduardo. Eduardo is Dr. Moreau's benefactor's son. He is visiting along with his cousin, whose name I can't remember. Eduardo is absolutely smitten with Carlotta. He's definitely a spoiled brat. He really gives off those vibes of like, I want you just so I can have you, but I'll get bored of you eventually. Their relationship on the whole just feels really young. They are enthralled with one another. There's a ton of passion between them, but like, you can definitely tell they have not stopped and just gotten to know one another. They haven't talked about all of the important things that would go with them trying to pursue a serious relationship. And because of that, it is very uncomfortable to read. And then with the other side of the triangle with Montgomery, I have to say, Montgomery is not a likable character, but at the same time, like, he's not a bad guy. He's dealing with some traumas from his past and he doesn't know how to work through them, which is why he's a drunk. And although he's definitely a bit of an ass to all other characters, I still can't help but like him. There are some moments where I'm like 100% yes, this man definitely has feelings for her. But then at other times, he just so much comes across like an older brother, or like she's his ward almost. I guess that could be because of the 15-year age gap between the two of them, which is one of the situations where like that's why I'm not a big fan of age gaps. This man has now called her sweetheart twice, and it seems like it's almost just a little slip of the tongue. She doesn't even really acknowledge it, and I'm just like crying over it. It's ridiculous. Once again, I was explaining this story to my mom, and once again she was like, you don't like these sorts of stories. You always say you don't like those, and that's why I don't make you watch them with me, and yet you're telling me about this and enjoying it. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's weird. I think it's just because it's Sylvia Moreno Garcia, honestly. I love this woman's writing so much. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I should officially try out some historical romance books, but any experience I've had with that in the past has never gone well for me, so hello again, beautiful people. So I officially finished out The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, and I'm having a hard time deciding on like an official genre for this. Some people expected this to be a sci-fi, what with it being a retelling of Dr. Moreau. I was advised from another video to expect more of a romance story, which romance is a heavy element in the book, but all in all, I really feel like this is more of a historical fiction with sci-fi and romance elements. But even the weird situation with expectations versus the reality of this book, I did still enjoy it. Starting out, let's talk about the romance with Carlotta and Eduardo. I wasn't too shocked about how that whole situation ended up playing out as the book progressed forward, but I will say that the climax of this book and elements regarding that relationship were explosive and entertaining and satisfying. With the other side of the love triangle in this book, namely Montgomery, I still continued to really enjoy him as a character. I honestly think he probably was my favorite character in the book, but I really did have such conflicting feelings on whether or not I was interested in these two as a couple. I really liked Montgomery. I did feel as though he cared a great deal about Carlotta, but at the same time, it was so odd because it almost seemed like he couldn't decide whether he was in love with her or just fond of her, and so I had a hard time with my feelings about their relationship as well. I do want to mention in regards to the romance element on the whole within this book, it's not a happily ever after. Nobody in that regard gets a happily ever after. Some people might consider that spoilery, but when I talk about something being a romance and there's not an HEA, I feel I need to tell people that because you should set your expectations for it. Anyway, by the end of the book, the romance really isn't the focus of this story. Instead, I think what really impressed me with this is the way Moreno Garcia was able to utilize the same major topics and underlying themes from the original story and keep those in this book, but also change how they're talked about just slightly to make it still original. She continuously brings up the questionable ethics that Dr. Moreau employs with his experiments. And then off of that, she also brings up quite often the utilization of religion as a way to control the hybrids, but also Carlotta herself. And I thought that was very interesting, particularly because eventually we learn Montgomery is actually an atheist. So it adds another element to that discussion that's taking place in the book. I tend to really enjoy religious topics and questioning of religion in my stories, so that definitely had me invested. In the end, I did really like this. I came out to about a 4-star rating. I just have to say, like, it's a very odd book to sell based on genre because it has a little bit of different things. I would even say there are some horrific elements when it comes to some of the fight scenes in this book because it does get a little bit gory. I think just how the book was originally marketed, how people talk about it, and then also the books that the author is most well known for kind of messed with people's expectations, and so I understand why this book hasn't gotten nearly as much praise as some of her other work. But overall, I still really enjoyed it. I still find it incredibly ironic that both of these books kind of paired so perfectly together because this was not planned. I didn't buy these at the same time. I think I actually technically I bought this like a year and a half ago, and Kat actually got me this for my birthday. So these pair very well together, and I think if you like one of them, you should definitely check out the other, especially if you like this author's work. And if you haven't read any of this author's work, I definitely would say you should try it. Atmosphere is something I absolutely adore in her stories, and then creation of morally great characters. Those are the two things I sort of always associate with this author, and that's a reason why I continue to pick up so many of her books. Now I am very excited for the few other books of hers I haven't read, and also her newest one that's coming out here soon called Silver Nitrate. Alright, so that is it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!